it's about 5 minutes out to go ahead and
Yep,
start.
I heard.
Okay,
Sounds good.
and I do have 5:30, so whenever Amy is ready.
Recording in progress.
We'll call the meeting to order.
Recording in progress.
I pledge we'll call the meeting to order. Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
Recording in
stands,
progress.
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amy, would you do roll call, please?
Commissioner Dibnall?
Here.
Commissioner Wolf? Here. Commissioner Wire?
You will be late.
Okay. And Commissioner Barsh?
Here.
And Mr. Mayor Lindsay?
Here,
Commissioner Wire?
you have before you the agenda for this evening.
And Commissioner Barsh?
Here.
And
I think we've got an echo, but that's all right. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening?
Motion to adopt the agenda for the evening.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there anything anyone wants to remove from the consent calendar at this time? If not, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Seeing no unfinished business, under new business, approve resolution number 2025-23, First Premier Construction Account. And Jameson or Amy, you want to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Previously, we've taken action to move forward with financing for our electric system improvements through First Premier Bank. In order to move forward with that, we now need to create a construction account at the bank so the city can utilize this account to disperse funds related to the electrical bond and also to pay for construction costs.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve resolution number 2025-23, First Premier Construction Account.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And Amy, would you do roll call? I will abstain because I have two relatives that work for Premier.
yes, Commissioner Dibnall?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
Commissioner Barsh?
Aye.
And I abstain.
Okay.
Okay, on number 7, approve resolution number 2025-24, property tax levy for 2026. Again, Jameson or Amy, you want to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Each year, the city is able to reevaluate its property tax levy for the following year. And with our budget approval occurring after October 1, we're still obligated to certify that levy by October 1. So we have a resolution here to establish the levy for next year. The total tax levy is proposed at $2,413,235.93. So this is last year's amount, and then it gets reflected. It can be increased or reflected for two different changes. First is an increase for CPI that's limited at a max of 3%. The CPI established for this year is 2.9%, or just under that. And the second change is an increase for growth in property taxable properties. So this would be any new homes, expansions on businesses, homes, that sort of thing. That's new structures are able to be covered underneath the property tax. So that increase for growth was 1.4%. And so the total increase from last year's amount is $98,825.33.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve resolution number 2025-24, property tax levy 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 8, award bid number 983, green substation site grading. And Jameson or Ryan, either one of you want to take this one?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we had a bid opening for the site grading of our green substation. We had, looks like about 9 different bids. The low bid was Sukup, yes, the low bid was from Sukup Construction, the amount of $184,184. This is much lower than the engineer's estimate of $475,000, so we're pleased to move forward with that low bid from Sukup Construction.
Okay. And some of that grading will take place this fall. Is that correct, Ryan?
I think that'd be more, Mike's nodding at me, so, yeah.
Mike? And
Mike, you might as well come up, there's a few electric items
I
here.
know the public is gonna ask the question, and so that's why I threw it out there.
Yes, that grading will take place this fall to accommodate the construction schedule for next year to stay on track.
Sounds great. Any other questions? Okay. If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to award the green substation site grading to Sukup Construction for $184,184.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 9, award bid number 985, furnishing major materials for the green substation. And Jameson or Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this bid award has 3 components to it, so I'll describe each of them individually and allow you to discuss and take action before moving on to the next. So the first component of this is 3 GOAB switches. Would that be the right way of calling it, Mike? These switches had an engineer's estimate of $60,000. We received 6 responsive bids. We did have a low bid of $55,125. Unfortunately, the equipment submitted in that did not meet the technical specifications. So the bid award is recommended to Border States Electric. Those are for switches manufactured by Pascor, and that's in the amount of $58,425. We had 2 bids from Border States Electric on this component, so when you make a motion, we recommend awarding to Border States Electric for the Pascor switches. Anything to add, Mike?
Nope, but similar to the southeast substation, what we just did with the major materials for that one as well.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
Doing these all individually?
So we'd be bidding on the first portion right now, the GOAB switches.
Yep, that's what I recommend.
Bid number 1.
Bid number 1.
I'll make a motion to approve the GOAB switches with Border States in the amount of $58,425.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Bid number 2, again, Jameson or Mike?
This would be for 3 potential transformers. Engineer's estimate was $30,000. We had 6 responsive bids in this one. Low bid was $29,535. Unfortunately, the equipment in that low bid also did not meet the technical specifications. Unfortunately, the next lowest bid was not much higher, so we recommend awarding the bid to Border States Electric in the amount of $29,565.
Questions or comments?
Mike, do we know, we get this a lot with, we have to throw out bids. Do we understand the question, I guess, or what, why we're having to do that?
Yes, some are technical specifications, some are bid bond, not meeting the correct bid bond requirements. It's, I think it's a lot of attention to detail on the specifications that DGR sends out. They're not quite being met.
I'll note that if you look through the bid summary for this one, they had 10 different bids submitted, but I noted there was only 6 responsive bids. So there's kind of 2 components to this, I want to be clear. As Mike said, sometimes there's insufficient bid bonds, and so that's what we narrowed down from 10 to 6. But then even of those 6, the equipment that they submitted did not meet the technical specifications. So they met all the bid requirements as far as bonding and the security and the delivery dates, but they still weren't meeting the technical specifications, and DGR reviews that for us and makes recommendations.
Other questions? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion for bid number 2 for the PTs in the amount of $29,565,000 to ITech.
Border
Is that
States
correct?
Electric.
Or Border States, Border States, sorry.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Bid number 3.
All right, we're on to the last one. So this is for substation steel. The engineer's estimate is $116,000. We had 3 responsive bids here, and the low was $118,925.40, and that was a good bid. So we're recommending awarding it to that low bid from Galvanizers Incorporated. And I'll note, since we made it to all 3, the total recommended bid awards is $206,915.40, which is just $915.40 over the engineer's estimate, so we came in very close to that estimate.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
Motion to award bid number 3 to Galvanizers Incorporated for the substation steel for $118,925.40.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 10, approval of change order number 2 from 69 kV to 115 kV, 13.8 kV power transformer at the Green Substation. And again, Jameson or Mike?
This bid is for the power transformer when we were rebuilding the Green Substation. I'll have Mike go through the details on the change here, but the change order, as included in the agenda packet, had an increase of $114,000, and this is for the final costs on storage and movement. But we actually were able to reduce that by $20,000, so the new increase would be $94,000, and then the new contract price would be $1 shy of $2 million. Mike, do you want to go over what this covers and the change in that reduction of 20,000?
Yes, so, what this covers, this change order, it covers, the storage, in and out of storage. It covers some testing. You'll see on the quote also on the change order that it has $20,000 for 8 extra months of storage. At this point, we don't recommend that we need that. We have that transformer, the Pittsburgh transformer comes, with a 66-month from production date or 60 months from energization date. So we feel that we're going to have sufficient warranty time in the field, and that was a recommendation from DGR as well. So,
Questions or comments?
What's the delivery date?
that's going to be pending on everything at the Green Substation getting done. So I think we have 8 months of storage on there right now is included in that price, and that could go down depending if we get it done early or not, but we just expect that 8 months at this point.
I know the change order's got a date of May 29, 2026. Would that be the date
Yep.
you're referencing? Yep.
Yep.
Other questions? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion approval of change order number 2-69 by 115-/13.8 kV power transformer at the Green Substation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 11, approval of change order number 1, City Library Ramp Project, Kesselwood Excavation and Dirt Work Services. Jameson, you want to address that one?
Just start off by saying this is an increase of $3,477.65. There's 3 different components to this, and I'll ask Ryan to walk through those.
Sure, be happy to. So the first component is a correction due to a staking error. Our department had staked out the slopes to accommodate ADA requirements. There was a mistake made during that, And so that resulted in them having to tear out some work that they'd completed. Upon tear out of that completed work, it was determined that we could save a little bit of cost rather than putting in a footing again, that we'd use thickened edge concrete. That saves about $2 a foot in lieu of that footing, but it's an additional $1,488.20. And then the final component is the final quantity adjustment. When you look at the bid items, there's a reduction of $360.55. So, as Jameson had mentioned, the increase of this change order is $3,477.65.
And I believe the total contract order is still within the budgeted price, is that correct?
You'd have to remind me, Amy, maybe you can remind me. I don't recall what the budget was for this project.
I do not recall either.
Okay, I might have spoken out of turn there, but the new contract price incorporating this change would be $62,458.21.
The ramp is in and that, but the handrails aren't yet? or are they?
Correct, yep. So, City Forces will be installing the handrail, it's just not completed yet.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve change order number 1 for the city library ramp project to Keslut Excavation and Dirt Work Services for an additional $3,477.65.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 12, approval of change order number 2, North Egan Avenue Reconstruction, Winter Contracting, LLC. Jameson or Ryan?
This is a small increase of $1,435. I'll have Ryan run through that too.
So during the construction project, we'd identified an underground conflict that required replacement of 36-inch RCP round pipe with 36-inch RCP arch pipe. Allows us a little more clearance needed between the top of the pipe and the junction box lids. In looking at that, we had also determined that we could save some cost by replacing some 8-inch valves with some 4-inch valves. So the result of the change order is an increase of $1,435 and is necessary due to the underground conflict.
Questions or comments? And I think the question's gonna be is what's the underground conflict? Is it a big rock or is it something different?
It's an underground utility line, a gas line.
Got it. Any other questions?
And we knew it was there, or?
We knew the gas main was there, but we didn't know the exact depth of it.
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
So how is that bid? Do we just guess where the line is, or how do you?
Well, we do have bid items for potholing utility, and when they go out ahead of the construction, then they'll pothole, and they'll determine what the elevation is. They had potholed a different location on that pipe, and it just happened to be that it kind of, was closer to the surface, right over top of that pipe. So we had identified the elevation in a different location, but it didn't carry that consistent elevation throughout. So we just needed, the round pipe would just pretty much sit right on top of that gas line. And so just to create a little bit of clearance and give us the clearance between the top of the pipe and the junction box lids, then just need that little bit.
Other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve change order number 2, North Egan Avenue reconstruction, in the amount of $1,435 to Winter Contracting LLC.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 13, consider approval of a memorandum of understanding with the Summit at Van Epps LLC. Jameson, you want to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an MOU requested by ICAP. They are planning a multifamily housing project, which would be consisting of 28 units. To do this, they are looking for financing through the Low Income Housing Tax Credits, LIHTC, and that's through the South Dakota Housing Development Authority. As they go through that, it requires a partnership with Lloyd companies. They're not tax exempt, and so the projects, typically ICAP is a tax exempt entity, and they don't pay the property taxes, but due to the nature of this project, they would be paying property taxes should this multifamily residential project be successful. I think there might be some conversations on whether that law can be changed so that entities such as ICAP can maintain their tax exempt status, but that's not the case it is now. And so as they're moving forward with that, they would like to request that the city consider a tax increment financing district down the road should their project be successful and their financing be approved. So this memorandum of understanding, from my understanding, would be something that would support their application and show that the city is supportive of the project and generally supportive of a TIF, and that it's eligible for that. However, this does not guarantee a TIF. It still has to go through all the correct processes, and there's nothing that holds the city legally to providing that TIF. It's just saying that you guys are supportive of the project and would like to continue to work with them on that. I believe that we were going to have a couple folks from ICAP. Are they online? Is anybody online from ICAP, from Zoom? Yeah, maybe they weren't able to make it. So if you have questions, I can do my best to answer them, but I'm not going to be as well versed as they would be on their financing application.
And I did speak with him in that because he had called me also on that, and basically in that, they need to get their paperwork all put together and submitted to see if they qualify for the funding. So this year would be, this support would be needed in that to show that the city is in support of their project and that moving forward.
So who will own it?
ICAP.
Yeah, my understanding is it might be a partnership, but ICAP would be the primary operator for this facility, and the Lloyd companies have some part in this to play as well, and that's why the MOU is with the Summit at Van Epps LLC. They're creating their own LLC to do this. My understanding is that ICAP's typically a nonprofit tax exempt property. They're looking to operate a low income housing property project, which also kind of fits that need, but due to the nature of the funding and their partnership, it would not be tax exempt. So they're looking for this TIF down the road should their project be successful. That would essentially let them keep their property taxes that if they were doing a project on their own, they wouldn't be paying to begin with.
And they will also have a commercial kitchen built in, and that they will be providing the seniors Meals on Wheels, and they just got a grant for an upgrade in the kitchen, I'm not gonna say cabinetry, the kitchen equipment and that would go into the building, so.
The last section of the project narrative, in fact, it's on the screen now, that TIF/MOU section, I think, describes it as well as I could say, is that they're in 501c3, they have tax exempt status, but because of that partnership for those tax credits, they would have property tax, and they're requesting a TIF to offset those eligible project costs. The TIF would benefit the low-income residents. If not for this TIF, and if the project would move forward, those costs would have to be passed on to make sure that project is still paying property taxes.
And it's self-explanatory on there. The city will not financially be responsible for any of it, in the process. So it's basically saying that we're in support of the project that they're doing.
Is this time sensitive?
For them, it is.
And you know that from just knowing that, or?
No, I was talking with him. I could try and call him on the phone and see if he's. see if he's available to answer more questions.
No, if it's critical, I thought you could attend, so.
So next steps, they're gonna, obviously if we show support here, next steps, they're gonna have a financial analysis.
Is Eric with ICAP? Is his name Eric?
Eric, yeah.
So I have someone trying to message in, he said he cannot. He said his connected via Zoom not working. It's not muted.
Ask him if he could call in on a cell phone. Then you can give him my number. Let me just try calling him real quick.
Calling Interlakes Community Action Partnership.
Roy, you wanna call 612? Hang on.
At the moment, I'm seeing his extension number.
No, just hang up.
He's got a number, you can call.
Okay? Trying to see if I can get out of this one now. Come on, phone.
Are you ready, Mayor? I'll give you a phone number.
Okay. 612?
605-201-7907.
Hi, I have you on speaker now, and we have a few questions in that people would like to ask.
I think I heard him on the Zoom. Everything you guys have said, Jameson, described the project perfectly. ICAP is looking for a tip because of the reason that we are tax exempt. However, on this particular project, that's not the way the tax laws are written for a low-income housing tax credit property. It's a multi-use building, so not only will there be 28 low-income housing tax credit units, there will also be a commercial kitchen, which will allow us to serve the frozen meals for the senior program, not only in Madison, but for the 14 counties ICAP serves, plus 5 western South Dakota counties out in remote western South Dakota. And that's a partnership with Feeding South Dakota.
Zoom working now, I bet.
Any other questions on that I missed?
Can I ask a question about the partnership with Lloyd Companies? And maybe you could expand on that a little bit more as far as what that partnership entails, and are they going to be receiving revenue from the rental units, or what exactly is that partnership?
Yeah, so this is a public-private partnership with Lloyd's. Basically what Lloyd's does is they're a one-stop shop for ICAP. They come in, develop the property. They usually manage the properties for ICAP, but in this particular case, ICAP will be managing the properties after lease up. So once the building's constructed, they'll fill the units for us, and then after that point, ICAP will take over full management of the property. Other than that, the only benefit for Lloyd's, besides helping a nonprofit out in these cases, and in addition to helping with create affordable housing units, is they'll get a developer's fee as part of the project, and usually, like I said, they help with maintenance and, you know, the whole management cost to that project. So that's usually how these are set up. They're the experts in the field and they kind of help us out to get to that point of lease up on this particular project.
Other questions?
I have one. So Eric, what happens when the TIF is done, once it's paid off or reaches its maximum of 20 years? Is this entity existed for as long as the building is operating, or does that get phased out? How does that work?
Yeah, there's an affordability period on this. I believe it's either 15 or 20 years. I always get that kind of mixed up in my head, but at that point is when obviously when the TIF would run out, then ICAP would be on the hook for that particular end of the deal on an annual basis. But we do have a pro forma that's built out for 35 to 40 years, taking that into consideration.
At that point in time, is Lloyd Companies still involved?
Nope, they will not be at that point in time. Nope.
Other questions? Seeing no other questions, do we have a motion or comments?
I'll have to abstain from voting just due to contractual agreements I have with ICAP.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion on the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding?
I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with the Summit at Van Epps LLC.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Amy, would you make a roll call, vote on this and that for record purposes?
Certainly. Commissioner Dibdall,
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf,
Aye.
Commissioner Wire,
Aye.
Commissioner Barish,
Abstain.
and Mayor Lindsay.
Aye. Okay. Thank you for being available.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and it was timely. The application did go in at the end of August, so this MOU will do nothing but help that application. So thanks for your support. We really appreciate it.
Very good, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, number 14, authorized signature on disadvantaged business enterprise and program goal document with the Madison Municipal Airport, for the Madison Municipal Airport. And again, Jameson, you want to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any airport that receives more than $250,000 in funding, which we are one of those, they're required to follow regulations of the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, or the DBE. So this is completed by the city about every 3 years. It shows our commitment to engage with companies qualified as DBE when we are bidding projects as well as selecting engineers. So we reach out and invite those businesses to bid, but they're not required to bid, and they may choose not to, but we're fulfilling our obligation simply by reaching out. Ryan, do you have anything to add?
Maybe specific to our DBE program. So our goal that's set is 4.6%. So let's say an airport might award a design contract worth $100,000. So the airport sets that DBE goal of 4.6, meaning we should aim to award $4,600 worth of that work to the DBA firm. So these goals aren't quotas, they're aspirational. And so recipients must make good faith efforts to try to meet them. And then prime contractors as well, bidding on a job must show that they will meet their DBE goal or demonstrate good faith efforts to do so. So there is a state unified certification program, and that's kind of the one-stop shop for this DBA certification for DOT-assisted projects. And so some projects aren't going to have DBEs that are applicable. They're not going to have DBEs that are qualified to do that work. So that's why this is not a quota, but a good faith effort.
Okay. Questions or comments? And this is a form that we've signed before in the past when projects have come about too, isn't it?
Yes.
Thought I recognized it when I read it.
I'll make a motion to authorize a signature on disadvantaged business enterprise and program goal document, Madison Municipal Airport.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. September 2025 finance updates. And again, I'll ask Jameson and Amy to address this.
Some quick notes. While the Finance Office continues progress on multiple projects and process improvements, a key priority at this time is the 2026 budget, including the directive for all general fund departments to reduce operating budgets. Digital budget books, which is a new product for us. The ClearGov site is nearly complete. Public release is still on track for November of 2025. And Finance is testing the platform to improve consistency and clarity of budget information. An audit update, the corrective action plan for the 2023 audit is complete. Engagement discussions continue with alternative audit firms. Supporting schedules and reconciliations have been brought up to date, strengthening internal controls and readiness for audits. Cash on hand, general cash, $9.14 million. Investments, $6.03 million. Checking, $2.14 million. Money market, $687,000. Other, $283,000. Restricted cash at $635,000. Our revenue guidelines. In the 101 fund, you'll see our revenue ahead of schedule, primarily due to reimbursements from the MADC. Also, on the flip into that, you'll see expenses also ahead of schedule due to those same transactions for the industrial park. We also received $100K approximately in insurance proceeds, which posted to the revenue. And we received $967,898 in long-term debt that was issued for the storm sewer project. So those are the variances you'll see in the 101 fund. In the 517 fund, you will see that revenue is behind as we had planned $3.593 million in interim financing. We have received $1.38 million in 2025. The remainder of that was received at the end of 2024. Also, for revenue, we received $748K in FEMA grant payments.
Questions?
Expenditure guideline.
Questions?
Profit and loss for August. Year to date. And sales tax wasn't up as of this afternoon. I don't know if you, did you check later? Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't have an update there.
All right. And then do we need a motion to move into budget item? Nope. All right. And number 16, public comment related to the 2025 budget. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
This is the agenda.
Seeing none, move into number 17. Revenues, sales tax, property tax levy, special assessment, and tips.
Did you have that on the screen? Did you take it off?
And Jameson or Amy?
Well, Amy's, we got a presentation that'll show up on the screens, while Amy's pulling that up. I'm not sure when, because it was there this afternoon when I printed it off from the website. Why don't you refresh the webpage entirely? Maybe this has been pulled up too long. When I went to the website and pulled up the meeting, yeah, there it is. Perfect. Okay, so while she's pulling that up, I do want to give a thank you to a lot of staff. Obviously, this room here is fairly full with a lot of staff who have worked very hard on the budget for some time, especially to Amy. She's been working nights and weekends to make sure that we get this best budget put together that we can and with the most clarity that we can this time, including the presentation that we'll be going through. Amy's had a huge role, and so I want to give a shout out to them and everybody to start out. This has obviously been a more challenging budget than we've had the last few years, as we're looking at finding some reductions. And so we wanted to give a closer look at what each of the departments are seeing. And please, I'm going to try to keep moving through fairly quickly, but stop me at any time, and I'll pause every now and again for questions as well. Notes I wanted to point out specifically as it relates to the entire budget. The department budgets that we're going to go through show, largely decreases, but changes in general from last year's budget to this year's budget. Those aren't including any wage increases or benefits or insurance increases for next year. We've put some placeholders in the budget so that we are accounting for those changes, but knowing that we don't have the exact dollars, we haven't gone through every single department budget to add those dollars and cents in. We'll do that once we have more information. Secondly, these are operational expenses. At the very end, we'll be going through the capital projects that are requested for next year. So the budgets from last year to this year's proposed, again, looking at operations, not the capital yet. And then finally, for sales tax, which will be the next slide, we're budgeting for a modest increase of 2% for next year. I think we could budget at 0%, we could budget at 4%. In the end, they're all projections, and we don't know what's going to be. So we're looking at, 4 to 16 months out or something, so we're just doing projections, and 2% is what we have in there right now. These are the primary revenues that you're going to see for particularly the general fund. Sales tax, we're looking at that $4.9 million with that 2% increase planned for next year. And then the property, and that includes the first and the second penny tax. I should know those are both incorporated into that nearly $5 million number. And the property tax is at $2.4 million, which was assessed or approved earlier during this meeting. The 211 account, that's the lodging and entertainment tax. This is sometimes referred to as a third penny. This is put on hotels and prepared foods and beds, and that's $275,000. And then the 214 is for the bid district, and that's that extra dollar or so on hotel stays. And then the 220 is a special maintenance fee. Sometimes this is called the front footage fee. This is the $1.50 per frontage, maximum of 100 foot that properties pay, and that goes exclusively towards the chip sealing program that we get each year. Finally, we've noted that we've got some money projected for the TIFs next year. So of course that is revenue, but it goes to pay off those respective projects. And that's about $45,000 planned next year. Here's a table kind of summarizing all of that in the different funds that we have. And so once we get to the first reading of the ordinance, the revenues portion will look something like this. Any questions on revenues or projections at this point?
Questions?
Okay, we'll move on to administration. So there's a number of budgets that we put underneath this category. First is the budget for the city administrator. That'd be my office. This does show it should be a small increase. It says minus 0.8%. That should be a plus 0.8%. And the only reason for that being is that we have moved some Civic Plus costs from other budgets and just consolidated the 60% for the general fund within my budget. So the Civic Plus is our website vendor, so it covers our website as well as our ordinances, our Municode, our social media archiving, and then our text alerts that go out to the public. So those are the Civic Plus costs. if that wouldn't have been moved over to my budget, there would be a 10.8% decrease. And the decreases from that are found by decreases to training and travel. And I'll note that for the general fund departments, we've also asked, like, if we need to find more money to cut, where would that next area be? And so many of them have that next cut identified. And for my office, the next cut would be just the remainder of that travel and training.
I'll note for this presentation that the increase shows as a negative as there was no actual cut taken. So throughout this presentation, if there's an increase, it'll show as a negative percentage.
Got it. That makes sense. So you can see as we move on to engineering community development, it says cut, and so that cut would be a reduction of 13% in this case. So that budget is proposed to move from $570,000 to $492,000, reduction of almost $78,000. And those reductions were professional services, training, travel, office supplies are some of the bigger ones. The next cuts that they would be looking at would be additional professional services and the remainder of their training and travel. The finance office, their budget's seen there as well, 471 down to 437. That's a cut of about 7%, $34,000. And that was for professional services, some supplies. I will note that we are looking at having one audit for next year. We have been pursuing different quotes or different proposals from various audit firms to see if there's anybody out there that can get us caught up on our audits. Our current firm has done a great job of completing the audits, but we need to find somebody that can get them done a little bit quicker, and so that's something I'll probably be looking at in one of our next agendas. And so this budget does include an increased amount to pay for that higher audit, and it is our hope that down the road, in a couple of years, that those audit costs will reduce again, but as we need to get caught up, we were willing to spend a little bit extra money next year to do that. If that was removed, the decrease would be 13.68%. The next cut they'd be looking at would be the remainder of their training, professional development as well, and then they'd be down to staffing. And that's, of course, not anything that we're looking at doing. Next slide also has some more administration. So the IT department, $89,000 last year's operating budget, looking to cut that $82,000. That's a 7.7% cut, almost $7,000. And that was office supplies, some furniture, training, and the next cut there would be the remainder of the training and the travel. There's some cybersecurity expenses that got added into, I'm the wrong one, sorry. Okay, communications, we'll jump down to that one. The current was $116,000, proposed $110,000, that's a 4.75% cut. It would be 9%, but there's a number of cybersecurity expenses that got added to a number of departments, and so that makes it difficult for a small department to cut more than the 4.75%. The changes there, reductions to special events, is the primary change on that, and as well as some training and travel. And the next cut would be, like many of the others, the remainder of the training and travel. Okay, I think that covers all the administration. I'll pause. I don't want to run too fast, but I don't want us to be here all night either, so feel free to jump in anytime. Wages and benefits. First, I'll note that the HR department, just like the last ones we've covered, they have a current budget of $418,000, proposed at $354,000. That's a 15% cut, or $63,000, and that's primarily in funds that were budgeted this year for employee training, professional services, our employee committees, culture development. Those are the areas that have been reduced, and if they need to cut further, they would be looking additionally at training, travel, employee culture. And then since we were talking about wages and benefits, we thought this is a suitable part to note that as far as the placeholders we put in for wages, right now we've put in 8% for the general fund. We believe that's higher than we're likely going to need. Right now the CPI is around that 2.5% to 3%, and there's a step increases in the wage study that might have some market adjustments. So we think that 8% is probably going to be a little bit high, but we wanted to be conservative, and it's always easier to reduce it later. We also factored 11% for insurance, and so that would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, that would be the liability and the property insurance at 11%? No, that's health insurance, excuse me, yep. Health insurance is 11%. We hope to have an actual number on that within the next month, but we are looking at a placeholder right now of 11%. And then the OASI and the workers' comp, as well as retirement, those are adjusted similar to the wages because those are tied closely together. We'll move on to the elected officials slide. So the budget for the mayor and commission, was $139,000. The proposed cut is $126,000, that's 9% or almost 13,000. For you guys or for the public, that isn't all wages. There's also some in there for office supplies, for training, for travel, just like other departments, there's a number of things that are in there. And then the attorney, since he reports directly to the elected official, we put that on this slide. That's on a contract basis. We pay a flat amount each month. The current contract is $68,500. That contract does end in the end of this year. I foresee that we could negotiate a new contract, and it would probably be the same amount, $68,500. So that's something that you are likely to see before the end of the year as well. And that's just legal services, I should note, is the entirety of that budget. Okay, I'll move on to public safety. Starting with police, as far as the general fund budget is concerned, the police is the largest portion of that. They were at just about $2.2 million, and they looked at a cut of 7.5%, $164,000, to get down to $2,031,000. I will note that we have 15 employees within the police department, including administrative staff and the officers that are at the schools. If you look at our patrol officers on a per capita basis, we are actually much below the national average. Typically, they're looking at, I think 2 to 2.5 is what you can see for officers per 1,000 people, and we are at 1.4, if I remember. Yep, the chief's nodding at me, so 1.4 is where we're at now for those patrol officers per capita. So we are already at a low end of officer to population ratio, and I think that shows the safe community we've got. We're not looking at, we don't want to reduce any. We feel like we're already in the lower end, and unfortunately, that's about as bare bones as our police budget can get at this time. The adjustments that were taken out there are for the SRT, the special response team, various expenses for them, reductions in drug testing, overtime, some shared expenses between the city and county, professional services, training, and travel. There are some increases to some IT and other technology needs within this new building here. They have more workspaces and more technology. It requires some increases there. Otherwise, some big reductions there for the police. And then fire, that budget's about $250,000, looking to reduce that 3.7% to $240,000. That's a cut of about $9,000. The cuts there were professional services, some reductions taken out for capital projects like the chairs, new chairs at the facility, as well as a generator, pagers was a reduction from last year. And if we have to find any more cutting, the fire chief said that through their nonprofit requests, they could look at a reduction for training. Otherwise, I'd say many or all of our budgets are pretty streamlined, pretty simple, and so there's not a ton of easy areas to cut at this point. Moving on to streets. That is also a larger portion of the general fund budget. We have under highways. Last year's budget, $1.26 million, looking to cut that to just about $1 million. That's nearly a 20% cut, $250,000. Some of the reductions reflected in there are for professional services, asphalt, crack sealing materials, some capital equipment. Also reduce the utilities. When we move that building over to gas, the utilities are coming in cheaper, so we're able to make that adjustment. If they need to find more cuts, they'd be looking at additional materials for blacktopping and crack filling. Snow and ice removal goes closely with that. The current budget's $142,000. Did actually find quite a bit, $37,500, to reduce that 26% to $105,000. And that is, actually that was taking out a sander body. So we did the best that we could to remove some capital expenses from the current year's budget, but some of those things that get snuck in there. That was a big change, but they were able to find small reductions here or there. Unfortunately, with snow and ice removal, we never know what the next year's winter is going to be, and within a calendar year, you're really dealing with 2 different winters, and we don't know what those are going to be like. So we budget accordingly, and some years we come under, and some years we can blow through that pretty quickly too. Looking at solid waste, we have a few different areas here. One is a restricted use site. This was in the general fund budget currently at $167,000, looking at a 16% cut to $140,000. That's a $27,000 reduction. And that is primarily due to some easier changes. So the land rent, this is going to be our last year renting at the current restricted use site. Our solid waste and streets crews have been capping that site internally ourselves, and they are very near to the end of that, and so we will not be needing to pay that land lease, $25,000 a year moving forward. We also made the last payment on the purchase of the new property. That's not reflected in these numbers since that was a capital expense. We had taken that out, and this is just the base budget, but that is worth noting that that was a large cost this year that we will not be incurring next year. Solid waste and recycling, that is for garbage services, was recycling, of course, and so that's $527,000, looking at reducing that 4% to about $550,000. That's a $23,000, actually that's an increase, excuse me, increase. And that's, this is an enterprise fund, so we've been talking a lot about the general fund budgets, but enterprise funds, they operate differently, and we are simply collecting what we need to in order to pay for those operations. And this does include a $2 per cart rate increase. When we projected out the budgets for next year, we found that it wasn't going to be making any money. It was going to be in the red, and so we would need to look at a rate increase to do that. There's not really any other expenses to cut from that department. So that would be an action that would be needed by the commission separately from our budget ordinance, but just know that the budget is including a $2 rate increase.
And that $2 per cart rate increase did bring them back into the black for the year.
They would have been about a $25,000 shortfall, correct?
Sure, and it puts them positive about $6,000.
And I'll note that we always look at some of our peers, even though this is simply what do we expect to be spending for the next year and what do we need to bring in to pay for that service. But we do still like to look at our peers, and we find that a $2 increase still keeps us in line with our peers. So when we look at making that increase or bringing that to you for consideration, we'll have those comparables as well. Questions on waste?
Roxy, for the benefit of the public, would you come to the microphone and that? Thank you. And then push the button and turn it on so it's red.
The $6,000 that Amy mentioned too also includes an increase for those that bring their recycling to us. So we'll look at a small increase to charge them to bring their recycling to us too. So the other licensed hauler in town is Bud's Cleanup.
But for the general public, it's still free if they carry it in themselves, just to clarify.
Correct.
Just to clarify.
Correct, correct.
So it would be commercial haulers would also see an increase for what they bring to our recycling center.
Yes.
Just want to clarify it
Yep.
for the public. Thank you.
Okay, I'll move on to parks. I'd say parks, streets, and police are the big three in our general fund budget. And parks had a budget of just over $1 million, and their proposed cut was 19% down to $838,000. So that's a $200,000 reduction. The primary changes there are machine parts, tools, field maintenance, so that'd be playground and ball field maintenance. And then this is a budget that they really found a little bit everywhere, so there's just a lot of miscellaneous cuts, but those are some of the bigger ones. The next cut there would be, unfortunately, personnel, and so that's kind of an area that we've set aside that we know that we aren't going to be looking at cutting any staff, and so that's just them saying that this is about as far down as they can get before they get to that point, but also whatever's left or a little bit more into those repairs for motor vehicles as well as maintenance on playgrounds and fields. So the implications there would be those fields don't get maintained as quickly or as well, or we'd be looking at ball associations to pick up some of the help there. Notes, this does include a lot of capital requests, so as we get to that in the latter part of the presentation, you'll see a number of those items coming through, and so that's not included within there. Health and Recreation covers a number of areas. First, we'll just talk about the Madison Public Library. That budget's $732,000. Proposed cut of 7.5% to $678,000 is about $55,000 less. The cuts there were cuts to book purchases, programming, and furniture. Next cuts there would be materials for the makerspace, so kind of some of the raw materials that you would need to operate the makerspace, as well as additional cuts to programming. I'll note here that the building, it's served us well for a long time, but there are some areas that are ongoing concerns. So we do have $30,000 included for general building improvements. But if something more catastrophic would happen, we might need to look at a contingency transfer or some kind of supplemental appropriation to fix whatever is going on. Community Center, this is operated as an enterprise fund budget as well. The current budget was $1,033,000, and the cut takes it just under $1 million to $992,000. That's about a 4% cut, $40,000. We'll note that revenue, or when we look at this budget, revenue for this includes a $300,000 transfer from city and DSU. That's something that's been budgeted the last several years, and that's split 60-40. The city assuming 60% and DSU assuming 40%. When we factor all that in, we did see a small profit for the community center for next year, but ultimately what that means is that $300,000 could be a little bit less than it would otherwise be. So again, that's an enterprise fund, operates a little bit differently. Any cuts there would really only be saving the city 60 cents for every dollar, because DSU is contributing that last 40. The Aquatic Center had a budget of $335,000, proposing to cut that 16%, $279,000, $56,000 less. There's not really anything else that we could reduce from that one. What was cut out with some building improvements that were budgeted this year that aren't necessary for next year. We did note that some of the pumps there are nearing the end of life, and we want to continue using those, and if one of them were to fail, then we would need to be replacing that, and so that would also require a contingency transfer or some other appropriation. And then the last of our health and recreation, the Sportsplex and the Armory are two facilities that are both operated by the community center, but then maintained and cleaned through our Parks Department. And they both are fairly minimal budgets. Fortunately, the Sportsplex, we had planned for larger budget for that one, and it's coming in much lower than we had expected. We had $50,000 this year. Next year, we're looking at $33,000. And the changes there are just adjustments for what we're actually seeing now that we've had more time under our belt. If we need to cut any more there, it'd just be down to cleaning supplies. There's not a lot of operations to that building. And very similar with the Armory, just under $32,000. Proposed budget next year is $31,000. So not much of a change there because the operating costs are just very minimal. The airport, so this takes away the airport capital projects, and the operating budget's looking at $337,000. We're still working on this budget and trying to coordinate with the airport contractor to determine what they need for next year. But right now, what we've got in there is $341,000, and so that's a small increase based on what they need for their operations. Okay, move on to economic development. So under here, we have our nonprofit requests, our community funding partners. The current amount there is $466,500. Per discussion a couple meetings ago, we have that in the draft budget as flat at the same amount, and so we haven't made any cuts from there yet. Just this is 11 different requests for next year from our funding partners. And then we have a few miscellaneous things through the budget. One is a sales tax rebate. This is in the ordinance. It's budgeted at $80,000. It comes in very close to that, and that goes to a sales tax rebate for Custom Touch. That again is in city ordinance.
And again, that is a split. So the city does receive some dollars from that, but based on how it was set up, and that so the public understands, is that in doing that and getting them to use the sales tax in the city of Madison versus paying it in other towns, in that the city gives a rebate back of a percentage of the sales tax.
It's a 1% back to them.
Is there a sunset on that, or that's forever?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe there is a sunset. The difference is then that.
You speak a little closer to the mic.
The difference is that when they purchase materials, the materials can, the sales tax can be collected either at the point where they pick them up, as in other towns, or they can, consider the city of Madison as their point of point of collection. And so as to encourage them to do that, the previous commission, agreed that if they do that, and that we would rebate back 1% of the 4% and that, or 5% that they collect. So the city of Madison benefits by having them claim Madison as the point of delivery for sales tax purposes. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
And I'll note, so we have a couple different areas, and one is for Custom Touch, and we budgeted $80,000 for that. I can't remember if it made the slideshow here, but we also have, it was $75,000, and we're thinking $60,000 would cover it, so we're reducing that. And then there's some other business rebates out there that reimburse that second penny on sales tax, and that's for eligible equipment purchases, so some of our larger industrials take advantage of that. We've adjusted that based on the past few years. Some years it's much less than that. Like I said, it was $75,000, and we think $60,000 would still cover it, so that's a small reduction. Any other questions on economic development? Okay, we'll look at our utilities department. And so of course these are enterprise funds. Each, the electric, the water, and the sewer each have multiple budgets that they are categorized in, so we'll go through each of those. The electric admin, this covers administrative services for the electric department. I'm gonna do some rounding here, but that was about 1.7 million. Looking at reducing that about 23,000, that's a 1% cut. And then electric production is related to our generation plant, and that was budgeted at 8,052,000. We're looking at reducing that 8,226,000. And so these are just based on what we're forecasting and projecting for next year. And that's what those adjustments are. On those two, here we go. The electric admin changes, looking at a reduction for our Utilismart contract. That's a contract for a service that we're no longer needing, and so that's being cut. Otherwise, not a lot of changes there. The electric production increase for some plant equipment. Otherwise, some small reductions here and there. And the next slide would have some other, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
If I might note, that the bond that was used to build the electric plant will have its final payment in 2026. And that, and before that, and that a renegotiation of the utilization of the plant. So the city will have that expense off their books in 2027.
Actually, small tweak there, it's November of this year. So November, correct?
December.
I was very close.
So
We got
off
tweaked the
the
tweak
books
a
in
little bit, but
2026. So
yeah, so very
that
close, a few months away.
bond will be taken care of, and that debt will be eliminated at this point. Correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, we're gonna look at some of our sewer department. The administration there was at 535,000, looking at a small reduction there to 527,000. Not any large changes there. Some reductions to professional services and et cetera. Sewer collection, so this would be our sewer mains throughout town. Also having a change there, 285,000 down to 263,000. When you actually will see these budgets in the budget ordinance, they'll be much higher because our large utility improvement projects are falling underneath there. But again, these numbers are just their operating numbers that we're working with. And then finally, sewer disposal. This would be our wastewater treatment facility. That was at 368,000. We're able to reduce that to 295, and the reason for that was reductions to professional services, parts, gas, oil, tires, things that we aren't expecting needed for next. Oh, excuse me, I'm getting my lines mixed up here. That would be a reduction from the building capital outlay. So we removed the digester project from this year's budget, and then there is an increase there of $35,000 from needed for biosolids removal. That comes across every 3 years. They're also looking at $17,000 for a new mower, and that would come across in the capital projects we'll see in a little bit. Finally, the water, starting with administration. is, $1.4 million, moving to 1.56. This must include the SRF in this one, I'm assuming, Amy? Maybe not? Actually, maybe this is the base, excuse me.
It says, is that Lewis and Clark expansion cost?
Oh, yes, okay. So that's gonna include some expansion costs for Lewis and Clark, and they had some other small adjustments, nothing significant, that's pretty much the same, it's just for that, change. Water distribution, increases for water meters, some reductions on training, travel, and then the Util Smart that I mentioned earlier. So that's, reducing 2% from 450,000 to 440,000, and this also has the SRF project removed. That's where the SRF would fall. And then the water treatment is moving pretty much the same budget as last year, 400,000 to 403,000. We are including $12,000 as an increase for sandblasting the filter walls to fix that problem, and then we aren't looking at having any well inspections needed for next year, so that was a reduction. That gets through all of our department budgets. Before we jump into the capital requests, do we have any questions on this?
Questions or comments?
I'm jumping way back on the police, that ratio.
Yes.
Does that include sheriff's department, or is that straight?
That would
strictly?
that'd just be our police department, yeah. And the comparison ratio that I mentioned, that 2 to 2.5 across the nation wide, that would also just be the local police. Good question. Any others? And feel free to jump back as far as you guys would like. Okay, I covered a lot there, since we have a lot of staff here that have taken their time out. Is there anything that I bungled up, or anything that I missed that you guys would want to make known? Was that not in there? Oh, yes. Okay, I can talk about that. Thank you, Tess, that's a great note. Okay, so.
And what was said is he had not covered electric distribution.
Yep, so I can pull that up here, that's a great point. So we had covered electric administration, electric production. Yes, we did miss from the presentation, the electric distribution. And that, oh, I had that here. I guess that's why I didn't make the presentation, it's missing from my notes, I don't know where that went to. I guess Tess or Mike, either of you want to just give a quick, oh, Amy's got it, okay. Pulling it up manually. The other one you did talk about street lighting. Yep, street lighting is a small budget. Not made any changes there, I think it was pretty much flat from last year. Down a little bit, okay. On the distribution side, so that would be, that covers a lot of projects, so while they're pulling that up, we have a lot of electric projects planned for next year, as you could probably see based on our prior agenda items. So we are continuing progress on expansion of our southeast substation, as well as reconstruction of our green substation, and then conversion of our overhead electric lines to underground. And so these are a number of projects that were planned over a 10-year period originally, and some of them have gotten bumped up due to factors outside our control. And so next year you are going to see a lot of activity across town for construction on the electric side of things.
Yes, one thing to note in the production, we are having a reduction in our materials by about $400,000. We're not doing a transformer order. We feel we have enough in stock to cover what we have to do. So that's one big thing to note in the production. And the street lights is pretty negligible from the prior year.
So, yeah. So last year's budget was $9,632,914.05. 2026 budget at $8,161,464. So that is a significant reduction for them for 2026.
And that does include our capital?
Yes, that number does, so.
Yes, this one includes our capital, because a lot of the capital we're doing is non-negotiable, really. We have to get those items completed. Substations, yep.
Since we're jumping back to electric, maybe Mike or Tess might know, have we done any analysis of the efficacy of the load management program and what's that saving us?
Our load, what is the number on that? It's well over $100,000 that, yeah, it's like, I believe it's like 400,000. I don't have the number. Amy, can you see that on there right now?
Between 300 and 400,000.
400,000 is what our load management saves us.
And that's deducting the credits that we give out to our customers, so that's the
Tess?
bottom line.
Tess, would you mind joining Mike up here, please, for the benefit of those that are at home?
I was
You know,
trying.
we can hear you and hear just fine, but when it comes to the recording and that, you come across very, very faint when you're, unless you're right close to the mic. So if you wouldn't mind adding what you just covered.
I just said that we saved between 300,000 and 400,000, and that includes the deduction that we give for the incentives to our customers, so that's the bottom line savings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that include what we're paying for annual maintenance for the system, for the OmniPro system? Or do you know
There
what that
isn't
is?
really any annual maintenance,
Isn't there?
no.
There's no annual fee?
There's the subscriptions, dues and subscriptions that we
And then
pay,
just some aging parts that we have. That's
whenever that happens.
Sure.
Nothing planned.
Yep.
And again, I would ask our commissioners to speak closer to the mic. So the benefit of the
Sorry.
We should have got headsets.
Yeah.
It's not the budget.
Any other questions on the operating budgets? Okay, we'll move on to capital. So this year we had a new tool at our disposal, and so we had asked departments to submit capital requests through ClearGov, and so that is, it's also the company that's going to be, that is working on our digital budget book, which was mentioned in the finance updates. And so here is the majority of the capital requests that came through from ClearGov. The ones that wouldn't be included were the ones that were requested for future years. So these would be the 2026 capital project requests. I think, if I remember right, in total, when you looked at all budgets, it was $12.5 million of requests, which is a large number. It also includes those electric projects I mentioned. They were about half of that. And then the Egan Avenue project, the second phase of that. So some large projects here that will have debt service tied to them once they're complete. So we're looking at capital projects now just specifically for parks and forestry. And actually, did we have a slide that had the bottom line on that? Did that get cut out? Oh, it's at the very end, okay. Can we just cut that real quick? I think that might be helpful before they start considering capital requests. So, setting a capital request aside, we've greatly closed the 8.8% gap that we were looking to, and so we're down to projected revenues at $10,126,000. Projected expenses, $10,241,000. That's still a gap of $114,000. I think there's some adjustments that we can make here and there, but the bigger concern is that this doesn't include those capital requests either. So for those capital requests, I think we need to be looking at ways that we can be matching dollars with others for projects, or bringing in other outside funding to pay for them. So that is the situation we're at now, without any changes to the budget as presented earlier tonight, or throughout this night. Okay, we'll jump back to the top of the capital. Parks and Forestry had 4 items here. One is dog park improvements. So this is a increase of the budget. This would be an increase of the budget for $10,000. This is a matching opportunity for revenue. So the Rotary Club has asked to match funds with the city, $5,000 with $5,000 to make improvements to the dog park. Flynn Field lights, so the ball field lights at Flynn Field are reaching the end of life. They're still working for the time being, but we know that they're reaching end of life expectancy. And so the expected cost there is $180,000, and we are looking at trying to have some matching funds from groups such as the Ball Association, Dakota State University, and potentially Heartland Energy could put together an energy grant as well. So we're putting out some feelers to try to make that project more feasible. If we don't have any contributions, I think that new lights for next year would be a challenge for this year's budget. But if we're able to get half or more of that covered, I think that'd be something that we should look at. Also requesting a new pickup, so their pickups are getting to be in older shape, I think is fair to say, and so they have a request in here for a pickup for the Parks Department. And then finally, extension of our rec trail, so we had applied for our recreation trail program grant, and I was really hoping to have heard by now. Last I heard, it was supposed to be dropped in the mail a week ago, 2 weeks ago, but I have not received anything yet, so hopefully any day now, we will receive determination of whether we are receiving that grant or not. So $336,000 is the estimated cost to complete that extension. That would be $200,000 from the grant, and $136,000 would be the city's local match.
We don't have a timeline on that yet, do we? Like, when we're supposed to hear?
I was hoping to hear by now, yeah. In the last couple of years, they were later, I would say as late as November in the award determination, but we were told that this year they'd be done sooner, and I was actually under the understanding that they were put in the mail a week and a half ago, and I haven't gotten hold of anybody to know if that got lost or what happened there, so I'm still trying to find that information. Capital projects, here's some of the big ones on the electric side of things. The underground conversion for feeder 8, this would just be the cost for some design in 2026. The construction itself would occur in 2027. And electric, remind me, we have 2 conversions left after this year, is that correct? 1? This feeder 8 is going to be the last one? That's exciting. Green substation, this would be the reconstruction, $3.3 million planned for next year. Southeast sub would be an expansion, the last one's the expansion on the southeast sub, and that's $2.3 million. I skipped over the transmission line for the southeast sub, and that construction would be just under $600,000. The library had a request for some planters and landscaping, so we've replaced the ramps, but the stairs remained in place, and as you walk up the stairs, you can see some of the landscaping, the planters next to that are starting to grade apart, and so we need to make sure we get that adjusted before it gets worse. These are requests submitted by engineering for various infrastructure. First is Madison 5th Street Bridge back wall rehabilitation. We had received some dollars for this up front from FEMA after the 2019 flood. And so now we're at the point where we need to implement that project, and so that's a repair on that wall. I had put into the request here repaving the Cars for Less parking lot. This is something that I do not recommend moving forward with next year. I think it's a bit of an eyesore, but it's not something that is a high priority. But I did want it on the list so that it's in consideration for future years. We've got a lot of new buildings around our campus here. We want to make sure that the property in between is looking nice.
If we have additional seal coating available in that from this year's project, is that a possibility of just seal coating to make it hold?
We could sure look at that. Last item on this slide is moving forward with the Section 205 flood study with the Army Corps of Engineers. Our projected share of that would be $375,000. Ryan, I think when I asked you, you said that would be 12 to 18 month project once it started moving. We've reached out to the Army Corps but have not heard back from them, so we don't know what their capacity is like or when they would be able to take on that project. Water distribution, so the North Egan Avenue project, this is the SRF project, $3.5 million is projected for year 2. Restricted use site, so these are projects or improvements that were included in this year's budget and we haven't moved forward with because we have not received the permit for our new cell or our new site. But this would be estimated cost to develop a new site, both with the digging of the hole and the capping with clay, as well as any fencing that would be, or any other development that would be required. And then the building, so we had a building at the old site and we have dismantled that and kept as much as we can, and we'd like to rebuild that at the new site, but that's going to take concrete foundation as well as electrical. We'd like to do some new siding, and so the cost for that is estimated $150,000. Streets, had a request for a roll-off container for $8,000 to hold metal. Currently we do have one container that's for all city departments, and they were looking at having one that could be for the streets metal collection. And then the sidewalk for $60,000, this is what we estimate for next year's sidewalk project. So this covers both the city's properties that might be in the area as well as ADA corners and ramps, and then estimate for properties that, that might not be done by the owners, and so then we'd be looking at assessing that like we do for other sidewalk projects. The Sportsplex, I mentioned their budget is looking a lot friendlier than we had originally budgeted for, but we know that the roof is still in need. This year, we replaced the north 2/3 of the roof. The south 2/3, or south 1/3 is still remaining, and we're worried that it will begin to leak in the next couple of years if not addressed. And so this is the estimated cost to complete the remainder of that roof. It's $92,000. We could split that project in half and do half of it this year and half of it next year. There is some small savings of $4,000 if we get it all done in 1 year. Well, water sewer rate study. Earlier in the year when we looked at updating the infrastructure improvement plan, we had a budgetary number of $75,000, which we knew was a little bit higher, and that was from one engineering firm. Our staff have looked for other alternatives and gotten a few different proposals. And so this one would be for $25,000, and it would still accomplish what we'd be looking for in a rate study. So that takes us back to the overall budget position. A lot of information thrown at you. I'm happy to stand by for any questions.
Questions or comments?
What's this number? What was that last number?
114,000.
But that's representing
That's the operating budgets.
without capital. And what's that percentage? I guess I could do the math here.
That's not much. Percent, a little under.
1%?
Maybe.
Just slightly over 1%.
And we talked about the 8.8% that the general fund needs to reduce. Earlier in the year, that was actually based on higher numbers. Those were putting together the budgets based on, what we had available, and it did include some capital projects in there. So I think when we were looking at that time, we were looking at a $12 million revenue estimate. And so we've adjusted those, taking out some of those projects, some of those grants. For example, the airport has typically a large federal grant that comes through and inflates those numbers. So when you look at the 8.8% was based on a larger number. The $114,000 is actually even less than 1% than we were originally looking at. So we've definitely come a long ways, but of course we still have a little bit further to go, especially if you want to make room for some capital projects next year.
Other questions? Comments? Questions from the audience? Comments? Okay. Seeing none, and that, well, do we have any public comment?
I will need to push for probably some direction. There's some areas that I think we'll need to look at. So if there's an area that the commission would like to see us further evaluate or any adjustments that need to be made, any direction that you would have would be helpful.
So we may or may not have the insurance numbers in before the final budget approval?
On the health insurance, we'll have those in time for the first reading.
We will? Okay.
Yeah.
Do we know what that total 11% accounts for
In health insurance?
in health insurance? I'm just curious how much we're talking about fluctuation
Like
overall.
what dollar amount?
Yes.
I do have that.
Your 11% includes your both health and dental increases.
Do we know what overall the total number?
11% was about $73,700.
So even if they come in 8%, we're only looking at maybe a $10,000 difference, $13,000 difference, okay?
And same thing on the property casualty insurance?
We had that in at
7%.
7%, which was a $21,000 increase.
And I did hear today that we should and possibly be looking at a larger increase than 7%.
That's why I asked, because I know what rates are doing.
Amy, did you get a ballpark number or?
10 to 15.
Okay, So 7% is 21,000, so, 10 to 15, you're gonna be looking at 30 to 40,000, probably.
Other questions? Comments or direction?
I know you kept the promotions and community contributions budget flat. I think, we might need to look at, if we need to cut something, I'd take a look at that before we have to cut personnel or, some of the other more, critical departmental things.
That budget was $466,500.
So yeah, first off, I just want to thank all the departments for looking at their budgets and finding these cuts. This wasn't easy. I am kind of in agreement with the rest of the staff. We need to make additional cuts to cover this shortfall, and if we want to look at capital projects, we're gonna have to make cuts to cover that as well. I think we can get across and do that, get some of these capital projects taken care of, without reducing staff. My fear is, next year. This budget that we're proposing here isn't something that we can do year after year. There's been extreme cuts to asphalt, crack sealing. I believe the PD, isn't replacing a vehicle. There's things like that where, if revenue doesn't change or if something doesn't shift, I think we can get through this year, but we're kind of taking a little bit of a gamble there. And I want people to be aware of that. If we don't do something this year, we kind of limp through to next year. If things kind of remain flat or relatively lower than what we expect, we're probably gonna have to be a little bit more heavy-handed in the following year. Some of the considerations after looking at across all of these different areas, to account for that $115,000, I think the health insurance, some of the other insurance, it's gonna negate itself. It's really gonna be a wash. The other options where we can look at are the nonprofit funding, some of those other areas there. Again, a 10% cut, I believe, was only about $75,000, so that's not gonna get us there. The other side of it I wanted to consider was potentially part of that wage increase. So there's the step increase of 1.5%. There was another 2.5%, I believe, for, was that cost of living, a COLA adjustment? CPI?
Yeah, we had 8% budgeted. We're looking at a CPI around 2.5%, maybe 3%. The step increase is 1.5%. And so anything beyond that would be just planning conservatively for that wage update to make sure we're staying competitive with the market. But I'm still hopeful that's gonna be a little bit high of a estimate.
So potentially there's an additional 4% on top of there that we could adjust with. And I think when we looked at that, I wanna say that was close to $500,000, or was it?
Yeah,
Or was it 360?
so looking specifically at the general fund, an 8% wage increase was $427,000.
Okay.
General fund wage increase was $428,275.95. Enterprise is $325,287.16.
So I guess, from my standpoint, there would be some slight wiggle room there. The only other option is to look at cuts to departments individually. So I think I would like to challenge the department heads, if there's any additional cutting that you can do, please look at it. But if not, I would propose reducing that additional wage increase just slightly, maybe 1% or 2% to save a little revenue. Combine that with some of the cuts on the nonprofit side. Hopefully health insurance, the rest of the insurance kind of remain flat. We can throw a couple capital expense projects in, but I think we're gonna be, that's a bare bones budget from what I'm looking at. And the biggest thing there is we need to hope things get better for the next year. Costs don't go up as quickly, revenues climb a little bit better, and hopefully we can reinstate all of that travel, that training, the new police car, some of these other expenditures, because I don't think there was any other capital requests for the city and streets department, so they didn't have any equipment accounted for. Sweeper, garbage trucks, there was some stuff there. And there's some other things there. Otherwise, and I'm just speaking to the commission as well, the only other places I can see is if we start looking at cutting services. So reeling back what the parks already did, you know, mowing and some of these things where people are gonna be affected in the community, I think that's really gonna reflect back negatively, and that's where we're gonna see a lot of negative feedback. So that's kind of where my position was, and that would be my direction, and I would.
One of the things too in that, when you talk health insurance and that, you know, maybe we could, take a look at what the deductibles are and see if there are options available that would help reduce that 11%.
Yeah, I know, it sounds like the HSA option is not offered or heavily utilized if it is, but, you know, typically that's a much cheaper plan that could reduce the premium costs.
And I think the city's benefits are really good. I really wouldn't look to touch those benefit packages as they are. But that would be an option as well. I'm not sure if that helps provide a little insight or a little direction. We can go through, do you guys want to look through at some of the capital projects and try to point out maybe the ones that we're really interested in? I know there was some funding with the Flynn Field lights where, correct me if I'm wrong, but I had marked down roughly 90,000 from DSU, potentially up to 45,000 from the Baseball Association over 5 years, and then potentially what we could get out of Heartland, you know, a $180,000 project that we could do for under half the price or half the cost to us. That might be something worth considering. Same with the dog park. Otherwise, the rec trail is another one. 2/3 of that project is covered if we get that grant funding. And the pickup, that's another option. But those are obviously gonna increase that shortfall. So before we do that, we probably wanna consider possible revenue.
Yeah, I agree.
Expected we'll be getting the permit for the restricted use site once the hearing is that next month that's taking place?
That is the hope.
So when the permit is issued, how soon would we be starting on that?
You know, this timeline's gone on a lot longer than I expected, so it's hard for me to take a guess at what the remaining timeline is. The hearing is scheduled for the end of October, but beyond that, even if it's in our favor, which is what we're expecting, it could go on longer than that, because I think there's always more appeals you can make beyond the initial board. But if it were to go in our favor, in best case scenario, we are able to start digging that in the winter months if we can get it bid out and put together. But I think we'd still be hard pressed to have a site operating by spring. There's a lot of work to do between getting a permit and opening the doors to a new site.
Other questions or comments? Or direction?
Yeah, I would agree with Jameson too on the paving for Cars for Less. I think it's worthwhile or like Mayor had said, to look at potentially just sealing it if we could, just for the way it looks. Sidewalks, is that something we could potentially, you know, skip a year in our improvement plan or something like that? What, are we doing about $40,000 a year? Is that close?
Yeah, it's been a good rough estimate.
You know, not necessarily the repairs, but maybe the additional sidewalk that we're adding. We could.
But typically in that with the sidewalk repairs, and that if we're in a neighborhood and the people adjoining the city property need to upgrade theirs, that's usually when we do ours as well. And then the other part of it is based on the corners, the handicap corners, that's also in there. So if we have a neighborhood in that is putting in sidewalks and that, then the city puts in the corners. So that is an estimation of cost, but it also does go right along with the amount of sidewalk and that is either newly installed or in areas in that where repairs are done. did I answer your question?
Yeah. I guess in my overall opinion too, with the nonprofits, I would really like to try to keep that flat if possible. I think, you know, some of those are quality of life things, but they're also revenue contributors. And so if we can get creative without moving that, I'd like to see that. But I don't have the answer for that.
We have several departments that are looking at the next cut being personnel. So I guess without any direction, is that the step you want us to take?
No, absolutely.
Finance, police, parks, we're all looking at personnel as our next cut.
The other thing is our hope is that the legislature doesn't attack the property tax again next year, and that the economy starts turning around and our revenues come in better than what we're anticipating. But that is the catch 22. Where is it gonna go? And we don't have that answer in front of us.
So if we do a 1% wage deduction, so wage increase that 8%, we move that to 7%, we do a 10% nonprofit cut. That's gonna put us at right around $160,000 revenue. So that'll put us in the red about 45, or put us in the positive about 45,000.
Correct.
And if I could interject in that, the 8% is an estimation based on this
Correct.
wage study. We'd be more looking at the 4 and, you know, which is the 2.5 and the 1.5 are, you know, as the wage itself, and the other 4% is the unknown at this point in time. So we can't really say that we could make a cut in that. We would have to address that at the time the wage study is finished.
And I should note, not just the wage study either, we are still in the middle of union negotiations, and so we need to respect.
Yep.
But of course, these are, as the mayor said, these are projections, these are estimates, so we could put whatever number we want in there, and hopefully by the time we get to the first reading, our intent is that we would have more exact numbers that can be put in. And I always do say somewhat humorously too, that the second we pass a budget, the next day it's gonna be outdated, and something's gonna change, so we just do the best that we can.
Yeah, I'm real reticent to, I mean, if cutting personnel is next step, I am reticent to go there, as well as, you know, take away wage increases from employees, because it's just an estimate on the revenues that we're looking at, and by gosh, if it turns out to be more than what we were expecting, I sure would hate to have to cut people that we didn't need to. So I would, if you know, if there's some.
And we're only talking about a 1% discrepancy. In reality, it's $114,000. It's not something that we can wait to see where the wage study comes in, where all the wage increases look, how that actually ends up laying out, and we might end up flat.
Sure.
But it can go the other way too, so.
Right, and no capital, so that's the big piece. I really think the budget will flush itself out. I'm not too concerned about $115,000. I am concerned about how we handle or obtain any of those capital expenditures on top of that.
If I could ask a question about the aquatic center, and says the pumps are nearing end of life, but we don't have that in budget, so we keeping our fingers crossed and expecting that they'll last through this coming summer. Oh, hey, Mike.
Mike can talk about the costs. One thing I didn't note that's important is that this budget does include $300,000 in contingency. So we know that, especially with tighter budgets, as everybody's pulling the belt a little bit tighter, that there's going to be some unexpected things that come up next year. And so in lieu of passing a new supplemental appropriations ordinance, we can do a contingency transfer with a simple resolution to take that $300,000 from that fund and move it to where it's needed. So if a pump went out, that would be where we would be looking for as a contingency transfer. Mike, do you know what some costs are expected for that?
Well, the pumps that are in there right now were installed in 2007 when the pool was built. We've rebuilt I think 3 of them. There's 3 pumps total. I think they've all been rebuilt and put new seals and all that stuff in them. But the impellers and everything are showing basically 20 years of wear. With that being said, you can't get them pumps anymore. Now you have to go to VFD pumps and stuff, so which in return might save in electric costs instead of them running all that. But we're looking at probably the early bids I seen, or quotes I seen, 10 to 12,000 per pump. So, and there's 3 pumps in there, so if all 3 of them went bad in 1 year, I mean, which is highly unlikely, but probably $10,000 to $12,000 probably.
Can you run one pump that stays at the old, or once one goes, you have to replace all 3?
You
because
can
of the
run, you can
circuitry?
replace them one by one, but, and that's what we would have to do. Unfortunately, you can't get by without running one, so.
Is it the motor and the pump?
Yeah, the motor, it's a big, like a, I don't know, 12 horsepower motor or something, 5 horsepower, I don't know, they're huge. I mean.
I just
so-
wasn't sure if you could purchase the pump separate from the motor.
Yeah,
VFDs would try
and
to
that's what
force
we're
it.
worried about is the pump, or the motor itself,
motor, okay.
because they haven't been replaced, and then, you know, hindsight 2020, the 2020 chemical deal, they were cleaned up and from there, so.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure we're not, gonna be in another situation of having the
I
full audit
mean,
commission for.
I think you're looking at $10,000 or $12,000, I mean, there's probably wiggle room in different line items that we can probably
Yeah.
borrow from Peter to pay Paul if we have to to get a pump or something like that.
Yeah, and there is money budgeted for building maintenance and repairs, so there is some there.
Yeah, I didn't know like how long-term of a, repair it is either. If it's-
Yeah, and to be 100% honest with you, I'm not exactly an expert on them by any means, I mean, so trying to find one would be the next hardest part, so. And maybe they can be rebuilt, but I know that they said that when we go to order them, we're gonna have to order VFDs. So,
Yeah, we have 10,000 budgeted, so
is it in building and structures what we put 10,000 in?
I did in pool improvements, so that'd be specific to the pool.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't think that's specifically for the pumps, but they would be available if you would.
And then I think there's 5,000 in building and structure too, which was,
Scroll up.
I mean, but that covers everything for roof repairs, the door handles,
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So 15,000 total.
so.
Other questions?
I guess with that
Thanks,
said,
Mike.
I would just leave everything as is, leave it flat, leave the nonprofits the same. Cause with a $114,000 shortfall, if we throw in the $300,000 contingency we have, we're still in the black then.
Well, that
Let's see where
contingency
that-
can go really quick though, too. There's,
That's why I'm thinking until we know what the wage looks like or that
Yeah.
side of it,
I've noted some of the capital projects that were noted here by the commission. And factoring in the revenue that we'd get from some of those, you're probably looking at $500,000 to $700,000 for capital projects though, too.
projects, okay.
Other questions? I'm comfortable with the discussion that we've had this evening and where we are at this point in time until we get more detailed instruction, you know, of what our actual costs are gonna be, you know, closer to it. And so, unless Jameson has any additional questions on that, I think we've kind of answered, you know, where we are at this point.
Yeah, I think this has been a productive conversation. It's one step further. We're getting closer to that goal. I've kind of joked to some staff that we're putting together a 1,000-piece puzzle, and we're also making the puzzle pieces as we go. And so I feel like by the next, every day and every commission meeting, we've got a few more of those puzzle pieces built and ready for the puzzle, and we're getting close to the end. So I appreciate the direction, and if any other questions or comments come up in the coming days, please don't hesitate to reach out.
All right, we'll move on. Do we have any public comment, either online or in the room? Seeing none, under announcements, we will have City Circle, which will be, you know, answering questions and that the public or anyone else has for the 2026 budget on Monday, September 22nd, from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Madison Public Library. And then our next regular commission meeting will be Monday, October 6th at 5:30 p.m. And we do have board openings. We do have one vacancy that's coming up on the airport board that would have an ending date of April 2030. So if you're interested in any of those and that, you can go on to the city website, fill out an application and send it through Jameson's office, and it will be presented to the board, to the commission. So any other announcements anyone has at this point? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming, everybody.